Hi, friends and listeners. Welcome to Egg Meets Sperm, the podcast. We are very excited to have you back today. And as you know, this season is focused on real life women, real life stories of women who have been on the fertility journey. And these women are just here to share their heart, share their spirit, and share what their journey has been about and what their journey has been like. So I'm really excited to have one of my patients here today. Um, their name is Miakoda Taylor. She's a two-spirited woman whose ancestors are both indigenous and immigrants to this continent. They are a settler, resettled as a result of choice, slavery, and the trails of tears. They were born and raised on Lenni Lenape territory. I hope I said that right.
Yes,
Uh,
you did.
known in dominant culture as Brooklyn, New York. They currently reside in
Chichenyo.
Chochenyo Ohlone land, territory colonized and renamed by imperialists as Berkeley, California. Miakoda is the founding director of Fierce Allies, a thriving, integrated, multicultural network of individuals, groups, and movements embodying the Fierce Allies practice of change and catalyzing dynamics of power and privilege towards equity and justice. And because this might be new for some of you, the pronouns that Miakoda opts to use is we, us, ours, or they, them, theirs. And I just want to make sure that we clarify so that if any of our listeners are new or unfamiliar with this language, they can get familiar. Welcome, Miakoda. It's so wonderful to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we've been in connection for many years in community. And it was a couple of years ago that you reached out and said, hey, I think I want to have a baby. Can you help me? So tell me a little bit of where you were in that time in your life, what was going on, what was the vision that you had for this family that you were going to create?
Sure. Um, you know, I I think I lost a fair amount of time in the journey to motherhood, trying to fit into the conventional box of marriage and husband or partner, and when I turned 40, I finally realized I was never going to fit in that box, and that box was actually undermining the prayer that I had to become a mother. So I decided I wasn't going to do it in a conventional family. I was going to do it in we'll just call it non-conventional for this moment, and really doing it in community with my closest friends and family, chosen family in particular, and that the partner. I was clear, at that point in my life, I'm pretty independent by the time I got to 40. And I've been kind of doing things on my own, making decisions on my own. I was like, I'm not ready to invest my time into trying to find a partner. I want to invest my time into pulling together a family to raise the child as the primary objective.
Mm.
And so I started asking around for among my male friends if people would be willing to donate sperm, and that was a fun and hilarious journey, uh, and a really beautiful one. It was really nice to recognize that there were people in my life who I wanted to be in my life for the rest of my life. And again, not as a husband or anything like that. It was just your family. And so, can we just up the stakes of this and create a child together? But I was also very clear I didn't want to co-parent. I wanted to raise a kid. I was going to take all the responsibility. And then they could be as involved as they wanted to be.
Mm.
And my hope was that would be plenty, and that would vary based on where they were in their lives. So started that process. Eventually, I landed on a particular friend who was the first one who said yes and actually really wanted to say yes and wasn't, sort of confused by the invitation. And we started trying on our own I think for about 3 months before I contacted you. And we weren't, we didn't have any results. And it also became clear during that time that I had fibroids, and
Mm,
I had fibroids before. So, so I reached out to you and was just, wanting to increase my fertility in general, but also, and really using a holistic approach, despite the fact that I'm the daughter of a doctor. I tend towards all things holistic. Believe a lot in food and nutrition as the source of health. And
yeah.
so reached out to you to see how you could support us both in the navigation of the infertility challenges of fibroids and anything else that might be complicating things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So remind me, how old were you when you first began that journey?
Well, began trying with your support.
Hmm. Yeah.
I guess, let's see, I feel like I was 2 years ago, would you say?
I think you were 42.
I'm 45 now.
Yeah.
So I think it was 43.
43. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you had these fibroids, but how did you feel in your body before coming in?
Yeah. I was worn down.
Yeah.
I generally have a pretty healthy lifestyle, but I also run my own company, and I had spent the last couple of years trying to build the company in a way that would allow me to generate passive income, and really kind of cranked myself into exhaustion. And so by the time I got to you, I was pretty depleted from all of that, despite having a lot of really healthy habits. Like, I meditate every day, I exercise almost every day, I eat all organic. Um, but I think that there's a tandem relationship between fibroids and stress. I
Mhm.
know that stress creates fibroids, but I think fibroids also exhaust your system. So I think that
Yeah.
was also pulling a lot. I mean, I was hemorrhaging every month.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it certainly took a toll on me.
Yeah. And your periods were like 10 or 12 days long at that
Yeah.
point. It was
Yeah. They're
it
pretty
was pretty insane.
unreasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then at the time, what did you know about your fertility? So, had you had any other interactions with doctors, or maybe you had some intuition of like, hey, I'm going to need some support with this? Or was it just like, you know, you were reaching out more from the perspective of, let me just do anything that I can?
Well, I feel like I'm a pretty informed consumer of health and well-being. So I had already done a lot of research. I was already tracking my cycles regularly. I had done a lot of research around like foods and supplements that I should be taking. I don't know if you remember, but there was a whole bunch of supplements that I was taking that you were like, "Oh, you should be taking those." I'm like, "I take those," and you're like, "Oh, okay." Wasn't necessarily taking the best brands of them because I didn't know that part of it, but
Yeah,
I felt relative to the average person pretty advanced in terms of
totally.
what I was doing.
Yeah, and you came in with like a super healthy diet. You came in with, I think you were on quite a lot of supplements and herbs. You had an acupuncturist, I feel like probably well before you came in to see
I had been
me.
working with an acupuncturist for like well over a decade. So
Yeah.
yes, and
Yeah.
I'm seeing them every week just as self-maintenance.
Right.
And they
Yeah.
knew that this was part of my prayer. So that, they had already been trying to perk things up a little bit.
Yeah. 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 So you definitely were like so far ahead of the curve. And yet there was the things that I was like, oh yeah, we should definitely work on these things before
Yeah,
we give you the go ahead to go ahead and start trying.
right.
Yeah. So what was your journey to motherhood like? What has it been like? I know we definitely had some trials and tribulations along the way, but
Yeah. I mean,
describe just to the best of your ability what you remember.
yeah. I mean, the big milestones were um the fibroids. And so August of last year, so how far into so that was a year plus into the journey with
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Well, actually, there was a milestone before that. The partner that I was trying to get pregnant with, it became very clear, as much as he wanted to be on this journey with me, was not ready.
Yeah.
So that was also, taking energetically, I could feel the disconnect of that. And so that was really taxing and sad and painful and all those things. And so had to let that go and regroup from that, and then I realized as I'm regrouping from that, I might as well get the fibroids out since I'm in a bit of a pause. So last summer I had 56 fibroids removed,
Mm.
which was more than any of us expected. We didn't know there were that many. There were lots of little ones hidden by the bigger ones. So
Yeah.
I was in 3 months of recovery from that.
Yeah.
Um, and so those, I guess, were the big obstacles. And then during that time period, I found another sperm donor who was just easy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that just I feel like I did a lot of work with that initial partner, just around just a lot of healing work.
Yeah.
So I feel like it cleared the vessel in a lot of ways. And then the fibroid was another clearing of the vessel. And then I got to the other side, and there was this, beautiful friend of mine who was just easy and simple. And so then I decided at that point to do IVF only because, I'm 40. At that point, I was 44. I felt like I had already lost a lot of time. I really had named this prayer when I was 40. So at this point, it's like 4 years in. I'm 45, clearly not getting any younger. And I knew that IVF would significantly increase my odds,
Mhm.
but I also didn't. In hindsight, I'm not sure that I needed the support of IVF, considering I had the support of you.
Mm.
Because I think once the fibroids were clear and, they checked and looked at my uterus and I had no scar tissue and then, I'm sure we'll get to the point of how well I did with IVF. In hindsight, I'm like, man, I don't think I needed their support. So, so should I continue to share into
Yeah.
those pieces?
Yeah. Whatever you like to share. Yeah.
Yeah. So then we started IVF, and they tell you I guess they start telling you this when you're 35, but at 45, they had no qualms looking me in the eye and telling me that I was participating in geriatric fertility, which I found hilarious. And I was like, okay, if that's the term you want to use.
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, so much of the interactions with them and even with my OBGYN, as supportive as they all were, they were not really encouraging. They were more like giving me all the dire statistics.
Mhm.
Um, and you were the exact opposite of that.
Mm.
You were just like, so what do you want to do? Well, when do you want to do it? Well, how do you want to do it? Okay, let's do that. And it was never like, oh, that's going to be hard, or I don't know if that's possible. And that's what I was getting on the other side. So it was really helpful. I had a similar approach to it as you. Like, I was like, this can happen. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
But it was nice to have a medical professional who was also encouraging that, in contrast to all the limiting belief systems of the IVF facility. So anyway, so I went in there and they told me at my age of 45, the chances of me getting pregnant were like, I don't know, something like 6% or less, or something awful.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, that it's considered outstanding results if your body produces 5 eggs. Usually only half survive the extraction process. Usually only half get fertilized. And this is all considered really good results.
Mhm.
And then you're looking at how healthy are those eggs? Are they splitting? And so I guess for a lot of women, they have to go through the extraction process several times to get some viable eggs that are worth the process. But thanks to all the work I think I was doing with you, they pulled 20 eggs out of me. 17 survived the extraction. 14 got fertilized, and they all looked awesome.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
for some reason, they still wanted to treat me like I was a geriatric patient, and decided, instead of just putting in one great looking egg, they put in 8.
Really?
Which was so frightening. I was
Oh.
like, I'm not trying to have a basketball team. I just want a child.
Right.
I mean, I am doing this in community, but I'm really doing this alone. Like,
Right.
and what was clear to me is the IVF company, their commitment was getting me pregnant. 1 or 2 is the same result for them.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, as long as you get pregnant, we're good. We did our job.
Yeah.
1 or 2, your quality of life after that, that's not part of our care or responsibility. So I had my beautiful chosen family that's been supporting me through this, holding a very vocal and consistent one baby prayer, saying it out loud. The kids, every time they see me, one baby, Miakoda, one baby. And so I was like, you just keep that mantra going. And sure enough, I have 1 baby. I'm 19 weeks in. And it's been pretty easy relative to what I hear it can be. I didn't have any nausea. Part of me thinks it's because all my healthy lifestyle stuff, I didn't have a lot to purge. But I also think I was so prepared from what you did and all the things you had me doing that my body was more than prepared.
Mm.
And I'm huge. People think I'm like 7 or 8 months in.
Wow.
Which makes me a little scared of how big it's going to be when I get to 40
Yeah.
weeks. But other than that, it's been pretty easy.
Yeah. Yeah. What an amazing thing. There's so many things that you said in there. The whole geriatric pregnancy thing, so my OBGYN said the same thing to me. I think I was pregnant when I was 37, 38. And this OBGYN was pretty much like, oh, since you're geriatric. And I was like, I'm a doctor. I can understand this language, but please stop using it with your patients. Like, this is not a healthy way to look at pregnancy, maternity, motherhood. Like,
it's not a patient-centric approach.
no.
That was about them. Geriatric helps them put you in a particular class of needs and services.
Yeah.
But they lost complete sight of the patient.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And she basically turned around and said, oh no, we are required by the insurance companies to tell you this, because then if something were to happen in pregnancy, they can turn around and say, well, we told you were geriatric. Like, it's just amazing. So the whole system, I feel like, is really set up for women to have babies much younger. And I think that we're in a new age. Like, women are choosing to have babies later in life, and that should be okay. Like, I don't see any reason why that's not acceptable, quote unquote. Not that it needs to be accepted by anyone except ourselves, but I think that there's a huge cultural shift that still needs to be happening in the medical world it hasn't caught up to what women actually really want to be doing with their lives. So yeah, and I think that I've shared your story with a few other people who are on the fence about, like, do I want to be a solo mom by choice, and so tell me a little bit about, like, that decision making process, because I feel like it can probably help lots of other women who are in their 40s, or maybe like just getting to 40 and saying, do I want to spend the next few years waiting for the right partner, and then, like, who knows when that person will be ready?
Yeah.
Or
Right.
do I want to just go and, like, do this on my own?
Yeah.
I imagine that decision is different for everyone, but
Sure.
I'm curious for you a little bit more. What was your process like, and how did you get to that final decision of, like, yeah, I'm just gonna do this?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm grateful to have an opportunity to share about that, because I wish I had heard more stories like mine. I think it would have given me more permission
Yeah.
to pursue it. And really, I think the short of it is, the love that lives within me is pretty huge.
Yeah.
And over the course of my life, I've come to recognize that conventional nuclear monogamous relationships don't work for me. I have too big, my love is too big and my needs are too big to expect
Mm.
any one being to meet all of that.
Yeah.
And the funny anecdote that goes with this is I remember when I turned 40 and I shared this with my dad, I said, I really want to have a kid. Having a partner is not something that I'm actually that interested in. I feel like I have so many partners. Some of them are, sexual. Some of them are lovers. Some of them, my friendships have a level of intimacy that I have a lot of friends wish they had with their husbands and wives,
Yeah.
and so I'm like, I feel really satiated in this way. So I think I'm going to pursue having a kid, quote unquote, on my own with a friend. And then I'm going to, take sole responsibility. And it's nerve wracking to tell your father that. My father is old school conservative doctor, and his response was literally, "Oh, thank goodness." um, I knew you were never going to fit in the box of like, single family home with 2 dogs and 2 cars. And that when you were pursuing that, I was always like, oh, that's not going to work for my baby. And
Mm,
so to hear you do this other thing, you do alternative things that really force you to be present. That's where you're at your best.
yeah.
So this is great. I fully support it. And then that gave me an extra boost of confidence to do it. And then, and it still felt like swimming upstream. I mean, explaining it to people. I think the combination of pursuing single motherhood, doing it at my age, um, everybody has they have so much fear. And so that gets projected onto me. So navigating that, and, I think part of it, like I think about how many women, when they get pregnant, like they don't, or they're even trying, they don't tell anybody, or they just
Yeah.
tell their like closest friends and their mom,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I'm in my 40s. I need to tell everybody so that everybody is like holding this prayer. I didn't tell people who I felt were like toxic,
Mm,
but, it's worth also noting, like last year in March, after the collaboration, the partnership with the initial person I was working with,
mm,
sort of fell apart. Like my friends upped the ante, and they were like, "You don't need even that level of partnership. You have us." And then that inspired me to want to have a commitment ceremony with my closest friends. And,
mhm.
you know, that kind of thing can sound kind of woo woo to people, but there was something about sitting with my closest friends that we all have close friends who we, in our hearts, know and hope are probably going to be in our lives the rest of our lives. So why not take that moment to look each other in the eyes and have a ceremonial moment where you say, you know what? I want to I want to live my life with you as a big part of it. And I
Mm.
want you to be a big influence on my children, and I want to be a big influence on yours, and then to have the children be there and have them have consent and join in. So it was my 15 closest friends, their partners, husbands, wives, and their children, and it was like the most fun, and it just cleared any doubts about whether those people were really going to be there. And and again, those relationships could fall apart, as relationships do. It's not that there's no contract here, but
Right.
that heart commitment, and to know that with them and with others that can be created.
Yeah.
So all of those things just sort of opened up the journey for me. And I think the last thing to say is, part of what shifted me into that decision was recognizing that how much the desire to have a child was influencing how I was dating.
Mm,
And so, I felt like I was dating people that with the thought of whether or not they'd be good parents, which
mm.
is not a good initial conversation to have on the first date, or even the 10th date.
Right.
And so it just it freed me from the constraints of that. And then even my dating relationships, like I would often say in a first date, like, "Hi, my name is Miakoda, I'm single, blah, blah, blah. And I'm trying to have a kid, and I'm not trying to have a kid with you." And it was amazing to watch people like have to move through the disorientation, especially men, because I feel like a lot of women my age are almost like attacking them.
Right, right.
And that's just no fun for them. And they were like kind of confused, ultimately really relieved, and
Yeah.
interestingly so, kind of wanted to see if they could still be the one to impregnate me, because all of a sudden their behavior, they were trying to impress me. They
Right.
weren't used to me to having a person not want them in that
Mhm.
role, and all of a sudden they wanted to be in the role. So it was just positive on all fronts.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, it was so amazing and so inspiring, honestly. Like your journey has just been so out of the box in a
Mm,
way that is like, life could be this way. Why
mm,
not? Like, why do you need to choose the conventional if that's not what you want?
yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's been really beautiful to just watch you going through all of these different processes, and coming out with this, like, of course, you have always been the embodiment of like strong, powerful, fierce woman.
Mm,
And like I've had the privilege really to like be involved and watching it even closer, that like you're just so inspiring to me.
thank you.
And like I'm glad that you're here today so that you can share this with other women, because I feel like you would be an inspiration to so many women. um were there any moments where you thought, maybe you like paused and said, is this really the choice that I'm making? Is this really what I'm choosing? Or do I want to like revert and go back? Like, like the moments when we're faced with fear and it hits us and we say, oh shit, I'm going to run the other direction.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, so I'm curious, if what was your relationship through that, like when either the conventional world was coming at you with like the fear paradigm, or even in your own life when like with that initial partner, when things kind of fell apart, was there a moment where you were like, oh crap, maybe I chose the wrong thing?
Can I come back to that question in a
Sure.
second?
Yeah.
And I'll ask you to remind me, because I think it's a really good question. And I just want to go back to the piece about, we were saying, I can be or am an inspiration to a lot of women. And I kind of feel like I want to drop into the pronoun piece,
Mm,
because that feels like a really important part of the fullness of this prayer for
yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I don't take non-convention lightly. I don't do it for the sake of just being difficult
Yeah.
or, resistant, to normative things. It's a very conscious and thoughtful. I kind of I guess it feels a bit like an act of resistance, but it's really an act of affirmation.
Hmm.
I feel like so many things are imposed upon us about who we are, who we can be, how we can do things. That again, I didn't have enough strength to actually be like, those are limiting beliefs. They may work for some people, but they are limiting me. And that I have the right and the responsibility to cultivate the dignity necessary to define life on my own terms. And I think that, part of, my partner, the current, we call him Patata. We were like, should we call you father like Papa, or should we call you uncle like Tata? Um, and we've decided on Patata, which in his own declaration, he says it sounds kind of like a potato, and everybody likes potatoes. So, we look forward to having kids say, Patata's coming over. You're going to go hang out with Patata. Anyway, Patata is queer and, gender nonconforming. And in my experience, and I have a lot of, different exposures to kind of two-spirit community, and as someone who's, both queer and gender nonconforming, there's I just think there's a medicine in not limiting ourselves to the dichotomous viewpoints, that are so entrenched in the idea of parenthood, mother, father, married, not married. Like they're so like you're in or you're out. kind
Mhm.
of thing. And, as I shared with you in the top of the call before we got on the podcast, when you asked me if I know the gender, I don't know the gender. I don't want to know the gender. And I'm
Mhm.
clear the child will determine the gender that
Mhm.
they identify themselves as.
Mhm.
Because I personally think that these dichotomous ways that we look at ourselves and each other, um, I think they foster harm.
Mhm.
Because again, you're either this or that. You're in, you're out. You're black, you're white. And you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. And I think part of the solution is to create more of these spectrums of
Mhm.
how things can be done and who we are and how we interact, and interrupt the assumptions that go with, I look at you and I see your long hair and I think I know who you are or how you
Mhm.
identify or what's important to you. And it feels really important to me to be raising a child in a context that from jump has people say, you know what, you don't know me at all. Get to know me, and to force that rethinking within the whole change family. And that's a big part of the reason I claim the pronouns that I do. And I don't subscribe to sort of the male female divide of that, because I, even in this story, and I embrace the term mother, and I think I'm so much more than a woman getting pregnant. There's so much more going on here, and that doesn't undermine other people's ability and right to claim woman as this powerful, potent thing that it is. But I just wanted to just take a moment and just name how much this journey both gave me permission to claim that, and my choice to again not follow normative has really given me permission to then do that in all the other aspects of my life.
Mhm.
And now
Wow.
we can revert back to your question.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, so the question again was around fear, and did the fear that other people were kind of throwing out at you ever cause you to stop and want to run away?
No.
Mhm.
I mean, I think partly because my work, my company is called Fierce Allies, and we often talk about fear and discomforts as the gateways to change.
Mhm.
And so when you're confronted by fear or discomfort, you can walk away and run the other way, or you can actually be like, oh, that's the invitation to do something different.
Mhm.
So I have a really uh, powerful relationship to fear. To me,
Mhm.
it's very compelling,
Mhm.
which I think for a
Mhm.
lot of people is odd. It's a practice I've cultivated. It's a
Yeah.
practice we teach and cultivate in our work. But
Mhm.
I was just clear, like, oh, those are points of resistance that if I can stay present and in my heart and move through that, I will be more resilient at the back end. So bring it. And
Mhm.
so that's been very consistent. And I think it's one of the things that also comes with pursuing motherhood at a later point in your life.
Mhm.
I've been through enough of those points of contention that I'm like, okay, so it's not going the way I planned it, but so has like 9,000 million other things, and when I stayed present in those, I always found the divine order of it all.
Yeah.
And so how do I just keep looking for that and trusting the process?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's a really great like that balance between fear calling you to open and then landing in trust. So has there been anything that you've done to cultivate trust that you're on your path, or trust in the higher universal order or whatever it is that you believe in? Like, has there been anything that helps support and kind of strengthen that trust?
I mean, obviously lots of little things, but I think the ones that are most important are generally not outside of me.
Hmm.
Obviously there was the moment with my dad where I was
Hmm.
like, oh wow, well if dad says this is cool, then I'm in.
Hmm.
So it was nice to have those moments, both with family and friends that affirmed my prayer. And those are important. They build the confidence.
Yeah.
But I think the pieces that are most important for me is, as I said, I have a strong meditation practice, and, I still do yoga pretty much every day, and
Mhm.
embodiment, which to me is much more than, being fit, is really where I drop into to see how I'm doing, number one, and really what's true to me. I have to drop a little bit below the dominance of my head. I'm, well educated and all of that, so I can easily lead with that. But I
Mhm.
just kind of drop into my body and feel sensations, and I'm constantly asking them, what are you trying to tell me?
Mhm.
And again, I've developed, similar to my relationship with fear, a relationship with discomfort. I think for a lot of people, they are so uncomfortable with sensations that anything that's uncomfortable is considered pain.
Mhm.
And I don't pain is barely in my vocabulary anymore, because I just find sensations interesting. I was like, oh, that what people might call pain, I just call, that's heat or
Yeah.
tightness,
Uh-huh.
but I have like a more intimate vocabulary and relationship to it. And I'm very clear. I have a very strong spiritual practice as
Yeah.
well. And I believe everything happens for a reason, and I was never attached to the idea of becoming a mother.
Mm.
If it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't meant to be.
Mhm.
With that partner, the last partner, if that relationship wasn't going to work, it wasn't going to work. I was clear I was going to get the healing I needed out of it, because I'm
Mhm.
clear there was a reason we were brought into each other's lives.
Mhm.
But I was never attached to it having to go my way.
Mhm.
Um, and then I think part of cultivating trust for me is also about cultivating faith. And for me, faith is kind of having trust in something that you can't measure or hold on to, or
Mhm.
and so for me, that's spending a lot of time at my altar, and
Yeah.
just holding the prayer, and also speaking the prayer out loud to
Mm.
other people. I think
Mhm.
that's, I'm thinking out loud as I'm speaking to you, but I don't know that I could have done all of this. I don't know that I would not have been pulled under by fear if
Mhm.
I hadn't spoken it out loud to lots and lots of people.
Yeah.
It made it real in a way that it was almost like this child already had a life,
Yeah.
and who was I to, drop out of the plan?
Mhm.
This
Mhm.
prayer was alive, and other
Yeah.
people were invested in it.
Right.
And so even if I had little moments of like, I'm tired or I'm scared, it was like, so people get tired and scared, get a good night's
Mhm.
sleep and get back on the horse, kind of thing,
Right.
and also look for what is that fear here to teach you, that will allow you to both be stronger in a resilient sort of way, but
Mhm.
also more tender, because I'm assuming that's going to be part of parenting.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think that what I hear you saying is that like having that sense of faith and faith and trust, and really like sharing that prayer that you had with other people made it more alive, and like supported, I feel like energetically, but your community has been really like a rock through all of this.
Yeah.
um so like cultivating that, and I think that fertility is so interesting because so many people, so many women, especially going through this struggle, end up isolating and kind of like turning it in on themselves, um, because of shame or guilt or whatever, like various emotions that come up through the process. But I'm almost hearing that it might be beneficial to explore this, like opening up and allowing other people to share that prayer with you, if prayer is not your word, you can choose some other word. But whatever that is for you, to share it and have other people hold space for you so that you can cultivate the strength and courage and like move through all of the things that really the fertility journey calls up for people.
Yeah. I would agree with that 100%. You know, it kind of blows my mind. I get it because of how our society judges people, and female bodied people in particular, and how much of our purpose is almost wrapped up with our ability to produce children. And you know, and all of that. But I can't imagine going through this journey, including all the possible landmines of it, without knowing that I could turn to a wide swath of people and have them cry just as hard, you know, and be, I mean, I'll just share, I think I did share this with you. At about 12 weeks, I had a frightening hemorrhaging episode. And for everyone to know, it was fine. I had developed what's called a subchorionic hematoma, which is a clot that's located on the outside of the uterus and outside of the placenta, and it had started to drain. And in the draining process, chunks of it were dropping out of me. So I had a very frightening moment where I literally started hemorrhaging, and chunks were just dropping out of me. And of course, I thought that was the baby and whatever. And I remember, you know, as I was navigating, literally sitting on the toilet, like calling my doctor and texting my friends. I don't have any friends that live within 5 minutes of me, but somehow like 2 people were at my house within 5 minutes. I was still on the toilet. There were people rushing through the door, and, you know, and then when I went to the emergency room, 2 other friends were there. And so there were 4 people, and it was amazing to watch the emergency room, particularly the security guards, who were like, who are all these people? You know, and I was like, I roll deep, and this is not my child, this is our child, you know. And of course they only let one person in the back with you, so my 3 friends were in the front, and then they confirmed the baby was totally fine, and they showed me, you know, they did an ultrasound, and I had a picture, so I was behind the glass wall, and I like knocked for the security guard to go get my friends, and he got them, and they all came over to the door, and I slapped the picture of the baby up on the window, and everybody just burst into tears, you know. And the security guards said, they're like, whatever you're doing, like, everybody should come to the ER wrapped in this much love and care, you know. Like, and every doctor's appointment I go to, somebody different comes with me. Kids come with me to these appointments, and they sit there and they look at the ultrasound and they say, look at our baby in Miakoda's belly. And like, to feel that level of investment from various ages and everybody, like, it's just, there's nothing to be afraid of. You know, like, even if it goes bad, I'm just going to be held in love, you know. And, you know, and I think the last thing to say, like, even now as I'm starting to make preparations for my will and what happens if, you know, something happens to me, and, you know, as odd as this is to say, you know, I'm pretty clear this kid will probably be better taken care of if something happens to me than if I'm here, you know. And like, what a gem that is, to be like, okay, so worst case scenario, you get better taken care of, because it'll be like the web will become even more tightly wrapped around you. And I think that's what comes with exposing your vulnerabilities and inviting people to participate and expose their own.
Wow. It's this has been I'm kind of speechless, because it is like your vulnerability and being able to share that with other people so openly has really like drawn all of this power and love and support. And you know, and I feel like you've spent years and years and years cultivating all of this, so it's not like it happened overnight. But I also feel like this is like, especially fertility, children, motherhood, like in traditional societies, we held this as a tribe. It wasn't like we were going to be in isolation in our own little family unit having a child. It was very tribal. And like watching your journey has reminded me so much of what that is like. Um, and like all of us can take some gems from this and like have it cultivate in our own lives. So I really appreciate for you to be sharing this. um, just as we come to a close here, were there any was there anything in particular that really supported you through our work together, that you felt like was like the thing? Um, and is there any advice that you would share with other sisters who are on this path to motherhood?
Again, before I answer those two questions, can I just add another piece
Sure.
that feels
Yeah.
important?
Yeah.
I feel like I just want to name my trauma history.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's another piece of this journey that I imagine without it being named in this space, people would assume, oh, well, you're one of those people who hasn't had a rough go at getting to this
Yeah.
place,
Hardly.
and exactly. And so, I just want to acknowledge that I'm the survivor of multiple rapes, um, by people I knew.
Mm.
One of those times I was gang raped under the date rape drug. And so I'm also the descendant of multiple generations of rape,
Yeah.
countless generations on one side of my family in particular. And I'm very clear that, and this may sound weird to folks who don't have a faith-based practice, but I'm very clear. I was raped because my ancestors were raped, and it needed to be healed
Yeah.
in a different way for it to not keep being passed on to future generations.
Yeah.
So I'm clear that a big part of this journey is my accountability to my ancestors,
Mm-hmm.
um, both past and future ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and there's so many other pieces which we could fill a whole other podcast interview with what is involved in that. But I think the most important piece that relates to this conversation is through my healing, the importance of me claiming that I deserve to be loved,
Mm-hmm.
and that all those things that happened to me, while I'm very clear I would not be who I am if those things had not happened to me. So in many ways, in many, I don't even think there is any way that it's not true. I'm I'm grateful that
Mm-hmm.
those things happened to me, because I really love who I am right now and
Mm-hmm.
how I'm living my life. And I would not be me doing this had they not done to me what they did. And so, again, the divine order of it, like resistance, pain, suffering, fear. What am I? How can I turn this into resilience or
Mm-hmm.
tenderness or strength, or the combination of all of those? And so that's been a constant thread through this as well. And so I just want to really encourage people who are survivors of sexual abuse uh, to recognize that the vulnerability that comes with pregnancy is an invitation. And for me, it's reclaiming my womb's ability to be used for what it was designed for.
Mm-hmm.
um, and to reap the benefit of that requires the vulnerability of all the pieces that I've shared and so many other pieces. So just wanting to keep that prayer alive, and in a lot of ways dedicate, the work that I've done, and really the life of this child to other survivors.
Mm. Thank you.
And then in response to your two questions, I mean, I think the two biggest things, well, three things. One, you were so comprehensive in troubleshooting my system, and we didn't talk a lot about, some of the challenges, but I had all kinds of, thyroid imbalances and other nutritional deficiencies. It was like kind of like playing whack-a-mole with my blood work.
Mhm.
And first of all, some of those things I don't even know that they would have been picked up by my doctors, because they were doing very superficial testing
Mhm.
about where I am and what I needed. And so it just felt so comforting to have your approach be so comprehensive. We,
Mhm.
we covered everything. And it's nice to have that level of confidence, and even to find all the things that were just slightly tweaked and to get them in alignment, which again, I think is why I produced 20 eggs and 17, 14, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. And, had no nausea, like that this has all been easy. So that piece is invaluable. And I share that not just with women, but I kind of wish there were some medical doctors listening, like, it makes a huge difference, that level
Mhm.
of comprehension. Secondly, again, the piece that I know you are knowledgeable about all the statistics, about chances and possibilities, but that's not where you invested energy. You invested energy in what's your prayer,
Mhm.
and okay, well, let's do that. And never made false promises, but you really contributed to hope, and possibility in a way that I feel like the entire medical industry did not. Um, and then I think the third piece, which, for people who think that their journeys may, I know your initial package is not as long as,
Mhm.
doesn't generally cover this long of
Right.
a journey. Um, your commitment to staying with me through it all,
Mhm.
because obviously with the partner dropping out, like there were a lot of moving parts,
Yeah.
and I know it had gone beyond the initial scope of care, and just your commitment to, making sure that I kept getting the care that I needed, and working with the increased finances that I was taking on with IVF, and continuing to make it accessible to me. I really do feel like you were a partner
Mhm.
to me, mind, body, and spirit, through this whole process. And I didn't feel that way about any of my other medical professionals. So it was
Mm.
nice to have someone who had so much experience and knowledge, um, coupled with so much passion and care. So thank you
Yeah.
for that.
Oh, thank you. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And any advice that you would like to share with others on their path, who are on their path to motherhood, parenthood, really? It can be for men or women.
Yeah. Um, I think the only piece I would add is, I just want to figure out the best way to say it. Don't give your power away. This is your journey, and all of these people, Dr. Ohm and your OBGYN and anybody else, IVF people, they are tools in your healing, pursuit, gestation process. And so, be informed, ask questions, demand that they see you, and hold your prayer. Don't let someone else define what it is or what it can be or how it can be pursued.
Mhm.
Um, and and I have found that that's empowering to me, but I think that we can slowly have an impact on the medical industry and how they relate to us as patients, and maybe stop looking us in the eye and calling us things like geriatric,
Mhm.
and find a way that can both medically categorically put you in the right place for insurance purposes or whatever, but can still be affirming of the fact that, like, you're a human being that's creating a human being, and like
Yeah.
that's just profound.
Yeah.
So claim your power, own it, don't give it away.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all of this. Like, you've just been so open and so giving of your journey, your process. I know that a lot of stuff is potentially hard to share, but we really appreciate you being able to share it. And like, I can't wait for people to listen to this. Like, yeah, just, I hope that we can reach hundreds of millions of women, and really like men, women, I don't really care, but people that need to have this information and to hear your story, because it's just so powerful and so beautiful. And and like, what I would say about you is that you have just walked through each part of this with so much authenticity. Like, I could see the moments that were hard and you were in it, and at the same time you were in it with this like faith that you were going to come out on the other side. um and like allowing me to hold the space for you and like hold your hand in some ways through the whole journey. But just the ups, the downs, the ins and outs of all of it, you have just been graceful. And I can't wait for this child to have you, the family, the community to be like growing into, because I know that the world that this child is coming into is going to be beautiful for it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I very much appreciate all that. It's been, I, I wouldn't trade in a moment of any of it. It's all, gotten us to this moment, and makes everything that is here, makes me appreciate every piece of it. So thank you for your role in that, and for all the trials and tribulations that came along the way. Thanks, Creator, for sending those our way.
Indeed. Thanks, everyone, for listening in, and we'll see you next time on Egg Meets Sperm.